At this point, everybody's heard about the Nintendo oopsie that was the pricing. Whether they consider it to be an oopsie themselves or not still remains to be seen, because it's possible that they actually think that they screwed up, but I haven't seen like clear confirmation. They have responded to it, and we'll touch on the response that they gave, because they basically sent out the vice president of product and player experience of Nintendo America. They sent out some people like Doug Bowser to talk about this with press after a very stressful weekend, I'm sure. And there's also been some reporting from like Yahoo Tech, following from Games Radar. You can see they basically like mirror the article here. But they say Nintendo is likely surprised, panicked, and having a full war room response to the outrage over Switch 2 pricing, former marketing lead says. And in essence, the people, there was also another person who used to work at Nintendo, like in their PR department, basically. And they've all said, Nintendo is freaking out right now. Like company-wise, they're not used to crises like this. I even shared a tweet. You might have seen it. Let me see. Scroll. Yeah, during the Treehouse Live event that they had, like the day after the announcement, I pulled it up, and it was literally just flooded with people either screaming, drop the price, or people joking and be like, make it 200 pounds per game, raise the price, and like quadruple the price. And I've never seen anything like this. Like everybody disliked this. It's one of the few things I've seen that really truly has brought the gaming community together. It's really impressive, because already the 450 price point kind of, I was like, that's like $50 more than I was expecting. But I get it. Like things are expensive. You know, there are tariffs already outstanding at the time that was announced. Okay. And then later that day, they announced that they were going to increase tariffs on like Vietnam, for example. And one of the things that Nintendo did that was quite sneaky was they started to assemble Switch 2 consoles and packaging in Vietnam and some other countries as well. But in Vietnam, my understanding is predominantly. And they did that because the tariffs were lower. So they're like, oh, we won't get dinged by having the consoles assembled in China. So we'll have them assembled elsewhere and we can bypass the tariffs that way. Well, the current administration saw that and was like, nope. And so they put like a 46% tariff on Vietnam exports into the US. So all of a sudden, like all profit for the Switch 2 gone. Like that, Switch? Gone instantly. Very, very, I mean, and apparently they didn't anticipate that because they immediately indefinitely delayed the pre-order date. So the pre-orders were supposed to go live in 2 days on the 9th, I believe. And now that is indefinitely postponed in the US. You just won't be able to pre-order one because they don't know if they're going to even make a profit at all at the current 450 price with the current tariff outlay or outlay, whatever. So they've just put it on hold, basically. And everybody is upset about the price of the console because it already was a lot. And now it looks like they might even raise the price even more, where it could start to approach like the $600 mark, which would be crazy. Because already at $450, people were like, I don't know. The big chungus wongus problem, though, is the pricing of the games. And this is one where I have not seen a compelling argument in defense of it, frankly. Some Switch 2 games will cost $80 for digital, and the physical versions will cost up to $90 starting. This does not include like Ultimate Deluxe Gold, whatever editions. This is just where they will start. And this was paired with some other announcements that like some of these physical boxes, these physical copies, will either be game key cards, which do not include anything in the game or in the box cartridge wise. It's literally just like, or in this case it would be a cartridge, but it's just like it requires a download. It's just basically a key card you put into the Switch that tells it to download the game. And then in some of these, like for the next gen update versions of these different games or the Switch 2 enhanced edition of various games, the physical version in some cases will just be a code inside that you have to put into the eShop and then download. So it's literally just a case you're buying for an extra 10, 20 bucks to get plastic that sits on a shelf, but literally serves no purpose, because once you download the game through the code that they give you, not even a key card that tells the console to download something, but literally just a code you enter. It's just plastic at that point. So people naturally are kind of frustrated. Already this type of thing would be unpopular even if pricing had stayed the same, but people would kind of just roll their eyes and get over it. Paired with the price hikes, everybody's ticked off because it just screams greed. And you guys know me. I've been perturbed in the past because I feel like people throw out the term greed very loosely. And I feel like it diminishes the value of the word when it actually applies. Because I feel like some people will throw out like greed. Even with something like GTA 6, I'm hesitant to use the word greed if they start that game at $80, for example. Because that game, according to multiple reports, will cost somewhere between $1 and $2 billion to make. Billion. And at that point, if you're like, yeah, I think we need to increase the base price, I'm like, you know what? At least I kind of get that. You're providing a product that was the most expensive entertainment thing in human history. Forget movies, forget, sporting events, whatever. This one game will be the most expensive entertainment product in human history. So if they want to raise the price, at least I get it. I think it's bad for the industry because everybody else will then raise prices, but at least I get it in that case. But I'm sorry, like charging up to $90 for Mario Kart starts to feel really greedy. It just does. They're also going to be doing paid upgrades to current games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. They're not going to include those for free. And they are adding some stuff like a companion app experience, which I'm sure 7 people will use. But already that, I don't like that. I think, you see some of these next-gen upgrades they give on PC, for example, for free. Xbox has given next-gen upgrades for free. Even PlayStation in the past has given next-gen upgrades for free. So to see Nintendo just setting the standard, nope, it's a pack. It's the next-gen upgrade, Switch 2 upgrade pack. I don't like that. And when you pair it with all of the other stuff, again, it just looks like they are trying to nickel and dime people across the board. And perhaps like the most clear-cut, hilarious, and like kind of depressing thing is that Nintendo created basically their own Astrobot. They basically created their own Astrobot, which is Nintendo Switch Tour, which is this thing that they showed during the presentation. And they are charging, I believe it's $6 for this. And it's literally a tutorial and an explanation and like tech demo of what the console can do. Oh, it's $10, you guys say. 10, there you go, 10. At 6, I thought it was too expensive. 10, what are we doing? And there's been other articles that have come out, since this reveal, such as Reggie Fils-Aimé. Apparently he had to basically beg the people in Japan, the head honchos of Nintendo corporate, to include Wii Sports with the Wii in the box for free. He was like, please trust me. It will sell the console. It will help this blow up. It'll be iconic. Just include the game for free. Because apparently Nintendo just has a company culture where they just feel like they shouldn't give away their work for free. They just don't understand it. They don't think that they should have to do that. They're like, no, we developed this. We're proud of it. You're going to pay for it. And it's just the idea of bundling it or being charitable to their customers is just insane, or giving like a little something to help explain why this console's cool. That's just a foreign concept to them. So they are charging $10 for this, and it's just laughable in my view. Because already, I mean, for this, I would say this is kind of low effort even for a tech demo, because it's literally just like scattered, button prompts to talk to NPCs, basically, to just tell you about the console and what this button does and how the magnets work. It's just kind of already it feels bad. And then you again pair it with everything else going on. It feels really, really, really bad. And for the first time in a long time, I've seen, and I think you guys have seen it too, a lot of even like streamers, content creators, even like Switch and Nintendo focused creators themselves are coming out being like, yeah, I'm not going to buy this at launch. I'm not going to do it. I can't really get behind it. I think it's just greedy across the board. One of these I could see people putting up with, but when you stack it with everything else, it really does just start to come off like Nintendo thought they were untouchable. Nintendo thought everybody would see Mario Kart World and a new Donkey Kong game and would be like, take my money. Like the meme, shut up and take my money. They really thought people would respond that way. It's just, I think that they've been really shell-shocked by the response. And I think, you see the corporate guys that are looking at like the feed of the Treehouse Live event and they just see it all. Drop the price, cut the price, drop the price. I think that freaks them out. Because again, Nintendo is not, I don't think... They need this to blow up, and they already were probably like a little iffy because it's not like a full total new thing like the Switch was compared to the Wii U. This is kind of like an iterative improvement, and it will be an improvement, but it's just, again, this is quite greedy, it seems, quite greedy. And so now they've responded, okay? They've responded. During a sit down with IGN, Nintendo of America's Vice President of Product and Player Experience, Bill Trinan, was asked about the pricing decisions by the company. Right off the bat, Trinan justified the decision to charge $80 due to the game's value to players. He said, quote, "I would say it's less about the strategy of pricing Mario Kart World. It's more just whenever we look at a given game, we just look at what is the experience, what's the content, and what's the value." They also are looking at the fact that the last game sold like 70 plus million copies, and they know that people will buy it. Everybody I know that owns a Switch owns Mario Kart. It's kind of like a no duh. That and like Smash, everybody's buying a copy of that game. So they thought, hey, if we can raise the price by $10, they'll pay it because everybody wants it. Why not? But honestly, this is a game that is so big and so vast. You'll find so many little things in it to discover. And there's still some other secrets remaining that I think as people end up buying and playing the game, they're going to find this to be probably the richest Mario. That's a good choice of words. The richest Mario Kart experience they've ever had. Interesting. On the topic of Nintendo Switch 2 games charging $80, Trinan again said it's because of the value Nintendo sees in its games for players. What I would say is that we just look at each individual game and we look at the content and the value of the game. And then we say, what is the right price for the value of this entertainment? This I guess their strategy in response to this is just to be like, yeah, we think it's worth 80, and so we're going to price it at 80, and you're going to like it. Like, that's literally all they're doing. What I would probably counter to some of that is what you're looking at is for the Switch 2 edition. That's the physical price for somebody that has not bought the base game. Okay. For somebody who has bought Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, the upgrade packs for those are $10. And if you happen to be a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack member, so if you're giving them money elsewhere, both of the Zelda upgrade packs are inclusive within that membership. So there's no additional charge. But I think overall, our general approach is really just to focus on what's the content, what's the value, and what's the appropriate price based on that. Which, yeah. Again, the whole strategy just seems to be, we're going to price it what we think we can get away with, and that's what we're doing. And that's the end of it. Doug Bowser, he is, I believe, the president of Nintendo of America, but what he said was, what you see right there is variable pricing with regard to the pricing of some at 80, some at 70. We'll look at each game, really look at the development that's gone into the game, the breadth and depth of gameplay, if you will, the durability over time, and the repeatability of gameplay experiences. Those are all factors, and there's many more that go into consideration of what is the right price point for the game. So I think you can anticipate that there will be variable pricing, and we haven't set a benchmark. I think they literally, like by definition, have set a mark on the bench of where you can go. They have raised the ceiling, because the ceiling used to be 70. And all of the discussion was, when you go to 80, that will set a new ceiling for where companies can go. And once the first company sets the price point at 70, for example, with NBA 2K, I think it was 21, you see a lot of other companies announcing that they're going to 70. And then that becomes the new standard. Eventually people feel like that's just the new AAA price. And then what do you see? $60 games then feel like they're at a discount. Companies that price at 60, it feels like they're being charitable, they're being generous, when all they're doing is pricing it what was the max price a month ago. But when you see something like Baldur's Gate 3 release at 60, it makes it feel like you're getting an amazing value, which you are compared to the $70 games. But just because, like, the reason it feels like a discount is because the ceiling has been raised. And so for Nintendo to act like that's not happening is just so insulting to the intelligence of everybody involved. I find it's past the point of laughable. It's just insulting, I think, because they're acting as though, well, no, we just thought Mario Kart's worth $80. So that's just what we're charging. And you know, that really has nothing to do with anything else. And it's like, no, there's a reason. I said during the showcase when all of this was coming out, like in the hours after when we were streaming, it's like, I think the company that is most giddy about all of this, like it's the big companies. It's the companies like Activision. It's, you know, the companies like Take-Two. They're going to be able to start charging $80 base price for all their games, and they don't even have to be the bad guy anymore. You know, Take-Two for GTA 6 now, if they price it 80, they won't even be seen as like the really bad guys in that situation because they didn't do it first. Like Nintendo's just absorbing all the heat for that. And I really think they thought that because they are Nintendo and because it's Mario Kart and everybody loves Mario Kart, right? They just got isolated and they got in their own little bubble and they just didn't realize how out of touch they were. How is it legal? I mean, how would it be illegal? They can price things wherever they want. They could charge $500 for Mario Kart. They could do that. That's fine. I don't think anybody would buy it, but they could do it. You know, nobody's saying that it's illegal or anything, or that there's anything, you know, criminal or anything going on. It's just pricing. You know, if I go to Starbucks and they price a coffee at $7, $8, I scoff at that and I don't buy that coffee. Same with when you price. I know that's now like the standard price of a cup of coffee there, but that is kind of my point, which is why I make coffee at home. But with games, it's similar where like you price a game at 100, a lot of people are going to start scoffing. And I just think Nintendo was so out of touch with gamers that they thought that they could do this and people would just roll over and take it because it's, you know, it's a Mario Kart. People love Mario Kart. But now they're kind of panicking, which seems to be the point. And this brings us to perhaps another important piece, which is that I think everybody understands that there are probably games that are worth 80. Like I would pay $80 for Baldur's Gate 3. I think that game is phenomenal. I'd pay $80 for KCD 2. I think that game is worth $80. The reason I'm glad that those companies didn't push to that point, and the reason why I don't think anybody should push to that point, is because of what it does to the rest of the industry. I think it raises that ceiling. It makes the hobby more expensive. And so you know, just because I think they could, and I can understand how in terms of value that could make sense, I don't want to see it and I wouldn't be happy about it. Even if I saw like Elden Ring 2 announced and they're like, yeah, it's going to be 80. I'd be like, I get it. If it's anywhere close to as good as Elden Ring was, I get it. You know, that game where, I mean, it was worth every penny of the 60 I think they charged for it. I don't think it was 70. I think it was 60, but I could be wrong. But it was worth every penny I paid for it, for sure. But I still think it's bad for the industry if that bar is raised, if that ceiling is lifted. Which is why I think it's good to see the community kind of coming together and everybody's kind of holding hands and be like, yeah, this is like, you know, screw you. I think it's good because hopefully it's a wake-up call to the other companies that are realizing that this is the drama they can expect. And now, like, all of the discourse around the Switch 2 has been pretty much whittled down to pricing. You know, I think Nintendo was hoping that people would be excited. They'd be giddy at the prospect of a new Mario Kart, playing Cyberpunk on Switch, you know, Donkey Kong. And instead, nobody's talking about that. It's all just pricing, even on Nintendo channels.
Edgar Vasquez donated $10 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
Hate that you said it, but I would absolutely pay 80 and even 100 for Elden Ring 2. It's my favorite genre and FromSoftware has me hostage. Minus Duskblood cause I hate Nintendo.
Yeah, even Duskblood. I mean, I think, so bringing that into it, thank you again for the Super Chats, guys. I'll catch up on all of the others too. It's just the $10 and higher get read aloud. So I kind of react instantly. But I do want to say that I've been surprised that the Duskbloods discourse has been also totally sucked out of the room. Pretty much the instant that people found out that it was multiplayer, which is, again, just fascinating, because I thought that there would maybe be some resistance to it, or at least interest from some. But instead, the discourse has pretty much been whittled down to this, like Ashen once said on X, I can't defend FromSoftware anymore. And it's just this meme. We really appreciate your single player games from gamers. Then just the finger, Night Rain, the Duskbloods. And Miyazaki actually had to come out during their like developer interview for Nintendo, and he had to say, no, we're still making single player games. Even though our last 2 games have been multiplayer or will be multiplayer, we're still working on single player stuff. But it's why I told you, like, no matter how amazing a developer can be, you just have to be braced that at any time, for business reasons, for even personal reasons, maybe Miyazaki just wants to buy a yacht and he's like, hey, I'm going to get bonused out if I make 2 live service games that print money for the parent company. So he's like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do that. I've heard stories that like even potentially some of like Fallout 76, some of that was potentially because of what some upper leadership and some upper head honcho people at BGS wanted to achieve in their personal lives, which is why they kind of pushed for that. I was talking to somebody just this past week who was like, yeah, I've seen Todd out and about. He pulls up in his Lambo or McLaren, whatever it is. He's like, yeah, the dude drives like crazy nice cars. He's loaded out the gills. And I'm sure some of that money came from pushing some of those things, you know. It's not a mistake. Some of these guys make a lot of money on successful live service games. You think of the guys that ran Bungie, owned and ran Bungie for years and years and years, and then they sell to Sony and make $3.7 billion collectively. And so all of that, you know, is a factor here. So you just never know. But I think for FromSoftware, why they're doing Night Rain, I think Night Rain exists almost entirely because they needed to develop the network code to make the Duskbloods. Why they're making the Duskbloods on Switch, I think, is probably a collaboration thing between FromSoftware's parent company and Nintendo. I think there's a ton of money involved there. And as a result, they made this exclusive. And the reason Nintendo wanted the Duskbloods instead of like a spin-off game or something that was more traditionally single player is because all of Nintendo's strategy this generation seems to be tied to online stuff. Everything is about having an online internet connection. Everything is about downloading from Nintendo's servers. Everything's about discouraging physical media and getting you to buy the digital version because it's cheaper than the physical version. Everything is about pushing you to become a Nintendo online shop member or whatever they call their membership online. And I know some people are like, it's only $20 a year right now. Yeah. Their whole philosophy this generation is to get you there. Do you really think they're never going to raise prices? Do you really think they're going to announce after all of this, yeah, we're going to push all this online stuff that's very expensive for us to run and we're just going to give it away for free? No, their whole idea is to get you onto that platform, locked into these games, get you excited for the Duskbloods. So you buy into that game, you buy the online account membership, which will be required to play that game, by the way. And then you keep that subscription for months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, and they're getting paid every step of the way with really high margins. It's so transparent. That's what the goal is here. And I think that's really likely the only reason Duskbloods is a multiplayer game, because they want you to get there. Like yeah, exactly. The C button on the controller stands for cash. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, because it's a chat button to use Nintendo's online tools to chat with people through a worse version of Discord. And that will also require a Nintendo Online membership, which they're trying to get you to buy into. Like every step of the way, it's just about milking you dry for more and more money. And I think, again, that is the entire goal. I mean, I really think there is no alternative explanation than they're just trying to be really, really penny pinching. Or penny pinching makes me think of like saving money. I don't think they're trying to save money. I think they're just trying to milk people dry. So I don't think anything really changes, frankly. Some people were like asking on social media, they were like, oh, do you think Nintendo's going to get scared and get like cold feet and lower the price or something? No, I don't think so. I think they are going to push it out. And like I said, I think the Switch 2 does well initially. You know, if they end up raising the price to 600, all bets are off. If they raise the price further because of like the tariff stuff, all bets are off. And I think that Nintendo knows that too. I think 450 was already a stretch. If they have to price it at 600, I don't know why on earth anybody would buy that. when they could just wait 6 months or a year, get it on sale, or when tariffs drop or whatever. If it goes to 600, I think all bets are off. But if it stays at 450 and all of that, ceteris paribus, all else equal, I think it does well in the first year. But I still insist, I think that the long-lasting effects on the more casual gamers are significant. I think that, the dad walks in to buy his kids a Christmas present and he looks at the shelf and he sees that the Switch 2 is $450 or more potentially. And then each of those new games that are physical sitting on the shelf at Target, Best Buy, whatever, he sees those. Some of those are like $90. I think he rolls his eyes and goes across the aisle, gets him an Xbox with a Game Pass membership. Because without a doubt, at this point, Xbox is far and away the best value for the casual gamer. It just is. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be subbed yourself, but you can't really argue with it at this point. And it goes back, and this all brings me, I think, to an interview from a while back that Phil Spencer gave that we actually talked about here on stream. Zakin Klut on X brought this up and shared the clip. But before we look at it, I just want to remind you, in business, okay, in corporate globalized markets, okay, like I said, this is my bread and butter. I studied this in college. Everything is about make number bigger. Everything is about growth. If your company is not growing, it's perceived as dying, okay? Same with your industry. If your industry is not growing, it's dying. Yeah, here we go again. Exactly. I didn't specifically mention my degree, though. See, I was like, I studied this. I got out on a technicality. But everything is about growth, okay? And the problem for the games industry the last 2 years has been that the industry has not grown. It's actually kind of plateaued. I think there's a few factors going on. For one, I think it's because in COVID and in the midst of COVID and coming out of COVID, there was a ton of money being spent on new setups. I think there was a ton of money being spent on people upgrading to the next gen. I think people were buying into a lot of new hardware. They were using their stimmy checks to get streaming equipment because everybody wanted, when they were staying home, to get into streaming Warzone and stuff like that. So there was a ton of money being spent. And in the last couple of years, people haven't needed to upgrade their setups. So peripherals, hardware sales, they've pretty much flattened out. Because if you bought a new computer 2 years ago, it should be good now. If you bought a new console setup, a new TV 2 years ago, you're pretty much good. Same with game sales. People are more picky now. There's been a lot of flops. People are more suspicious now when they see a game trailer. They're very hesitant and cautious and skeptical, which they should be, because there's a lot of slop that gets shoved out there. And so it's just sort of a reflection of what happened in the midst of lockdowns and the pandemic and everything. And we're still feeling the ripple effects of it even now. But I think that's why the growth was so great during there. And now it feels like it's plateauing in comparison because it was, it's just, those were exceptional times through and through. But it takes me back to an interview with Phil Spencer where he talked about this. Let's see if they include the question.
And today there's really two choices.
So this is in response to the industry not growing, okay? The industry is not growing. So what does Xbox and every other gaming company have to do in response to the fact that the industry is not growing? Because the numbers have to go up. Again, the corporate overlords, the investors, they don't care if the industry is not growing. Something else has to happen for the numbers to rise, for you to have higher revenue, for you to have higher profits, for you to have higher everything else. Something had the math is the math. You have to change some variable in the equation. And that's what he's going to refer to here.
And today there's really two choices on how do you grow the industry. Do you say I have a fixed number of players, the players that we have today, and do I find new ways to monetize those players to get more money from the players that I have?
Nintendo.
Or do you think about how do I expand the business I have by finding new players and adding those to the base of players that already play? Our focus on Xbox. And today there's...
And this, my friends, betrays the fundamental difference between Xbox's approach this generation and Nintendo's approach. And in some ways, PlayStation has sort of taken this approach with live service. I think their goal was you have your players and they wanted to find ways to to monetize them in new, exciting ways. So you like The Last of Us, we're going to create a Last of Us live service game. You like God of War, we're going to make a God of War live service game, which they tried to do and that inevitably canceled it. Their goal was basically, we have these talented teams, we have these IP people love it, let's make a live service version and then we'll make more money on those people. They just forgot, I guess, or never realized that the people who like live service games or just live service in general, a lot of those audiences are different from the people that love nitty-gritty narrative games, which PlayStation is known for. It was never really gonna work. And so, and now what we see with Nintendo is Nintendo trying to come along and be like, okay, so you guys like Mario Kart, right? What if we charged you like even more for it and for like everything else, and then we make like a huge push for the console to be about our online offerings. And if you like these other games, you can play them on your new hardware. But to take advantage of it, it's not just going to play better by itself. You're going to need to pay us even more or have a subscription to something else we have that will include it. And so, like every step of the way, just give us more money, please. And it's just the fundamental difference in approach. You either have to charge the existing customers more and get more out of them to make that number go up if the industry by itself is not, the rising tide that lifts all boats. Or you have to get your products to more people, because if the industry isn't growing, you just have to find ways to get new players into your fold, which is why a lot of Xbox players have been frustrated, because their approach has been everything's in Xbox. Everything is like, we'll put our games on PlayStation, we'll put our games on Switch, we'll put our games on PC, of course, on Steam, whatever, because our goal is to get them in front of as many people as possible, because they still consider that to be a win. Because it's better to sell, a copy with a 30% cut taken by Steam than to not sell a copy at all. And that's basically been their approach. Now, does this mean that like Xbox is some pillar of virtue? No, it's still a multi-billion-dollar company within a multi-trillion-dollar corporation in the form of Microsoft. They are not your friends. They're not your buddy, pal. Just because we can like Xbox's approach more than Nintendo's does not mean that magically like they are pillars of virtue and integrity. Okay, I think they're the better of the two options right now. I think there are cascading problems that come along with Game Pass. I don't like that you're basically renting all of your games. I don't like that it basically pushes them to do paid early access with like 5-day early access in order to get more cash out of you. I don't like the fact that then over the course of months or years, as people become reliant on Game Pass, they can then raise the price of Game Pass. And if you want to keep your save files, if you want to keep, the games you've been playing for months or years, you have to just pony up and pay the increased price. There are problems with all of it, okay? There is no perfect solution to any of this, but I do think that they deserve some credit, because Xbox could have gone the route of Nintendo, what they're doing right now. I think it would have been catastrophic, and I think they would be in even like more dire straits in terms of player counts and stuff than they are right now. But I like Xbox's approach, and I think Xbox's approach is better for the consumer, certainly, than Nintendo's approach, which is to just milk you dry every single step of the way. Still, ultimately though, I think the best, if we get out of the console realm, the best possible place for you to be playing games, just frankly, is Steam. You look at how many discounts, how many sales and stuff there are on Steam. You look at the wild value that is in Steam as a platform. Even just something as simple as the ability to play a game for 2 hours and then return it if it's buggy or broken or has other problems. Just that is an amazing value and protection for customers. And it's something that you just don't have on console, and that's why ultimately the best place to play games, I still insist, is PC. It just is. But if you are somebody that wants to look on console, I mean, even now, like you see Xbox coming out and they're releasing their games on PC. PlayStation is starting to launch their games on PC, potentially even day one as well, because they're starting to get a ton of extra revenue that way. So it's just becoming, I think, the ultimate place to play. But either way, I mean, it doesn't remove the fact that what Nintendo is doing, I think, is a mistake. I think it's a mistake. And I do think it will have an effect on their bottom line. I do think the Switch 2, after like the first few quarters where it's going to sell well despite all this just because of hype, I do think it will ultimately have trouble keeping up with expectations, just because I think that that scoff effect in the casual market will be significant. He took my thing. Red flag, red flag.